Hello, my name is Doug Dooley. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Data Theorem, and we're going to talk about APIs with ChatGPT 4 and the attack path visualization. Really, the underlying topic today is about the new class of data exploitation that is happening with enterprise APIs today. So the agenda, we're going to try to tackle these three major topics. One is how the playground for experimentation, the cost of modifying and changing and finding new insights with your data that's trapped in APIs, that has changed dramatically now with things like generative AI. So that is the first topic we'll talk about. Then we'll talk about how data, the underlying data, is really AI fuel, and APIs are the new charging stations to really utilize that fuel. Again, Gen AI is proliferating fast. It's going to continue to accelerate beyond 2024, and API data consumption will continue to explode with the usage of these AI assistants. Now, as a result of these two, the third concept that we're going to really try to talk about is security. Security for APIs, applications, the software supply chain. All of this needs to evolve. Right now, we're not in a great situation about how we're dealing with APIs, apps, and the software supply chain. And context is really becoming extremely necessary for practitioners dealing with API security and data safety. And this idea of attack path visualization, seeing the end-to-end visualization, will help our practitioners deal with API risk and privacy. So how's the playground changed? Sam Altman, who leads OpenAPI, has talked about assistance APIs will make everything easier. And you could argue, if you've ever played with any of these AI assistants, they are making many tasks a lot easier. It doesn't matter what kind of information work you're doing. If you've ever tried it to supplement or complement what you're working on, it has a tendency to provide some value, and sometimes it's extremely high value, sometimes it's sort of mediocre value, but either way, there is a range of value that most of us are receiving today with these AI assistants. And then now the head of developer operations at OpenAI, he talked about this API retrieval and using your own custom functions, combining makes these assistants much smarter and much more targeted to help with different kinds of use cases. So if you've ever played with OpenAI, I highly recommend going to playground.openapi.com. It'll redirect you to this playground area, and you can start creating your own assistants. So I was creating assistants back when ChatGPT 3.0 was the only thing that was available. And unfortunately at that time, there was no ability to do external API connections. So primarily what I was using these assistants for were, example, I have kids. We can create little math tutors here with these assistants, and my kids can interact with it. And they'll tell me consistently a math tutor built on OpenAI is superior to having an actual math tutor in person. More consistent, easier to use, just overall, just a better experience. And so that is a sort of alarming that this is even back in the ChatGPT 3.0 timeframe. Now, if you wanted to have an API hacking assistant, which is an an assistant to go out and try to attempt to penetrate and hack APIs and pull out data, classify data, and find what level of personal information, identifiable information is available in your APIs. This is super valuable for a security practitioner or a red team in a security, looking to do some sort of ethical hacking. This is fantastic to do. But again, it didn't work back in the ChatGPT 3.0 timeframe because you could not hook up external APIs as part of that process. Now, if you wanted to do this today with an enterprise API security solution, of course you could use companies like Data Theorem, who I work for, that provide this capability built into the product as one of many features it delivers. Companies like Telescope.ai, based here in New York City, founding team, 2 female co-founders who came out of Airbnb, who did a lot of this around data classification to help them go public. There's a lot of different companies you can use and different tools that you could use that if you have a target and a key and you send these tools after them, they'll start hacking away and providing insights and classifications around what's going on with your APIs. So right there, just, if you think about your API landscape, do you know where your most sensitive data lives? Oftentimes practitioners don't even know how massive their API environment is because it continues to grow in the cloud. and then where is their most sensitive data happen to be popping up across these different APIs. So again, there's a lot of enterprise tools that are helping to solve this problem today. However, we haven't been able to see this with just a generic generative AI solution until now. With these functions and retrieval capabilities in the playground, watch, we can see
So
here.
go ahead and select some tools.
60-second demo.
I'll turn on Code Interpreter and Retrieval and save. And that's it. Our assistant is ready to go. Next, I can integrate with two new primitives of this assistance API, threads and messages. Let's take a quick look at the code. The process here is very simple. For each new user, I will create a new thread. And as these users engage with their assistant, I will add their messages to these threads. Very simple. And then I can simply run the assistant at any time to stream the responses back to the app. So we can return to the app and try that in action. If I say, hey, let's go to Paris. All right, that's it. With just a few lines of code, users can now have a very specialized assistant right inside the app. And I'd like to highlight one of my favorite features here, function calling. If you have not used it yet, function calling is really powerful. And as Sam mentioned, we're taking it a step further today. It now guarantees the JSON output with no added latency, and you can invoke multiple functions at once for the first time. So here, if I carry on and say, hey, what are the top 10 things to do? We're going to have the assistant respond to that again. And here, what's interesting is that the assistant knows about functions, including those to annotate the map that you see on the right. And so now all of these pins are dropping in real time here. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And that integration allows our natural language interface to interact fluidly with components and features of our app. And it truly showcases now the harmony you can build between AI and UI, where the assistant is actually taking action. But next, let's talk about retrieval. And retrieval is about giving our assistant more knowledge beyond these immediate user messages. In fact, I got inspired and I already booked my tickets to Paris. So I'm just going to drag and drop here this PDF. While it's uploading, I can just sneak peek at it. Very typical United flight ticket. And behind the scene here, what's happening is that retrieval is reading these files, and boom, the information about this PDF appeared on the screen.
So this is a really powerful example of how the combination of writing functions with data retrieval, and that data retrieval can come in the form of external APIs, is changing the game of how we're building these assistants and going forward. So coming forward with ChatGPT 4.0, they've added that external API support starting in November of 2023. And when I went to go create that API hacking assistant, now I could provide a key, I could provide a target, and then I could put this generative AI to work. And it found, in this particular example, 42 instances of PII data that included credit cards, social security numbers, and zip codes. So now we're taking the power of this large language model combined with external APIs with specific directions, with specific keys and specific APIs. These things start to get a lot more intelligent to be able to find insights. And in this particular case, it's using OAuth 2, but it could have used anything like Azure AD, etc. So also from a cost perspective, with ChatGPT 4, they've lowered the overall cost by 2 to 3x. So the capability has gotten more powerful, the feature set has gotten greater, and the cost continues to drop. We're going to continue to see these cost drops because we're starting to see even some competition against NVIDIA in the GPU market, where hardware is oftentimes the reason why this is some of the most costly computing operations you can do. But we're seeing lots of competition come out, including Microsoft Azure coming out with their own chipsets. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So data is really the AI fuel, coming up to this sort of second topic, and APIs being the charging station. So what that really means is, the more interesting data that you have, you'll be able to mobilize it and monetize it using APIs. So, Elon even talking about his acquisition of Twitter and X. Now he's raised a huge fund and a huge new company just on XAI. So what we're seeing here is that taking advantage of unique data, proprietary data, using APIs is one of the ways you're going to onboard it going forward. And now OpenAI has proven that the business model is pretty successful. I mean, starting from 2022 to 2023, you're seeing a 37x growth in a year. Now, can they keep up with that pace? We will see, right? This level of growth seems incredible, but needless to say, we could say that OpenAI is not peaked at all as far as their value nor their innovation. So we're going to see as time goes on what's going on in this space. But again, interesting data, you leveraging APIs, putting it to a large learning model, coming up with interesting insights, turns out to be a very valuable business. Now, let's break down some basic concept. At the end of the day, ChatGPT is just one of many AI apps. It might be the most popular today, but it's one of the most utilized as far as from a consumer perspective and also used for business. So this is just one AI app, but it's all built on a large language model. Now, large language models are sort of the biggest rave of the big platform companies, but Microsoft, as an example, is talking about introducing more small language models that are more targeted for, let's say, financial services, retail, healthcare, specific industries. So we'll see how that goes. But these are just the different kinds of language models that you can build AI assistants on top of. The foundational models are even sort of more foundational than language. So, you see it with vision, you see it with speech, audio, etc., video. There's a variety of foundational models. And ultimately, generative AI sits overall all of this. And with the case of generative AI, that is what's creating all the buzz in the space right now. However, one of the things that we've all been talking about is when are we going to get to the point where we have artificial general intelligence, right? And how you could define that, we'll go back to Elon for a second. And he's saying it's smarter than the smartest human at anything, and it's less than 3 years away. So, he's thinking it's 2016. Maybe a lot of us don't think it's quite that soon, but is it within 3 or 4x of what he's saying, right? Could it be in the next 6 years, 9 years, etc.? So we'll see. Time will tell. So let's just take a quick survey. How many of you think it's going to be less than what Elon thinks, 2026 or less? Or is it going to be in the next 3 years? So maybe 2027 or beyond, or even more than that. So, quick raise of hands. API security, data discovery must evolve. This is sort of the final concept that we want to talk about here is that, look, everything that the businesses are doing leveraging AI is really about driving insights. And a lot of businesses have spent many years understanding their customers, their business models, where the value is, where the new innovations need to occur to deliver more value to their customers. And AI is sort of unlocking these understandings a little bit quicker. And you're starting to see companies take advantage of it and also be very protective of their data, right? One of the things that folks have been saying to us is, if we're a bank, why should we be giving all of our sensitive data to Microsoft, to OpenAI, to Amazon, to Google, to train all their models to get all this insight about our businesses? Why can't we keep that for ourselves? And I think that's sort of the next evolution of really about thinking about where is the risk here, right? Do the benefits outweigh the risks? And clearly, Gartner went out to the enterprise and did a survey of at least practitioners in IT, and 68% of business leaders talking to Gartner said that the benefits do outweigh the risks. So really, these keys are unlocking that genie from the bottle. And who are some of the key makers in the space? You could argue Microsoft is sitting in a very interesting position. They're the combination of owning Active Directory that's now on Azure, OAuth 2 being enabled now from OpenAI. They are really sitting on lots of proprietary data, or at least they provide the tooling mechanisms to allow businesses to unlock their own data to get that insight. But the question will be, will the key maker be part of the ones who benefit the most from unlocking all this proprietary data from these enterprise APIs? So we'll see. I think businesses are caught in an interesting risk-reward moment where, do I risk giving Microsoft or OpenAI all of this insight about my business? But the benefit, of course, could be to unlock new business models, to create new services and new capabilities for our customers, to delight our customers and deliver more value to our businesses. So this is the risk-reward model that everybody's sort of going through right now. And defending your APIs and defending your applications and defending your sensitive data, unfortunately, as a security practitioner, far too often we're dealing with red, yellow, green. One of my colleagues is going to talk about the stoplight analogy about, dealing with OWASP as an example of risking, looking at API and data risk. Is this really the way we should be thinking about API security? So we're pushing back a little bit because without context, why is something red? Why is something yellow? It kind of doesn't make sense. Just because an organization puts it on a top 10 doesn't necessarily mean it really fits to the business model and the risk model that really the companies are operating against. And so when we think about, yes, there are foundational things that we should avoid around exploits and vulnerabilities that could lead to data breaches, that seems obvious, but it still, again, lacks full context of what really matters. And so what we're proposing is really what the industry needs in the security side, particularly around APIs, is that kind of MRI scanner for APIs to provide that connective tissue to visualize like what's really going on, which applications, which types of data are involved. And based on that, you can make a better informed decision of who, what, when, and how. So this level of transparency, we believe, will improve security quite a lot. And right now, at the state of the art, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting closer. So here's an example. Data Theorem launched this at Apidays Paris late in last year. Customers are starting to adopt this. What you're seeing here is this is a serverless function. It happens to be done on AWS Lambda. So there's lots of serverless being built. So there's no server, there's no traditional operating system. It's all sort of containers and Kubernetes underneath. But ultimately, you don't have any altitude or access into seeing those operating system connections. It just is compute. Ephemeral compute spins up, creates API gateways. Those APIs have RESTful connections. They connect to web services, and those web services are out on the internet. So seeing this visualization, so now when there's a OWASP top 10 exploit on a very specific API, we can now break down, well, where does this fit in our organization? What applications is it connected to? What data sources are it connected to? So that is a more powerful way to visualize what is actually going on. So in this space around API security, I think it's important to point out there was a recent leadership ranking about who is really participating in a meaningful way to make the API security industry better. So Cuppinger Cole wrote a report called Leadership Compass on API security and management. And as you see here, there's pure play vendors like Data Theorem. We happen to be ranked toward the top, but there's also WAF and WAP vendors like Imperva, Akamai, Cloudflare. People know those quite well. And then gateway vendors, folks like Google, Apigee. So these are all the different contributors of what's going on in the API security space. So if you haven't seen this report, I definitely recommend checking it out. It'll give you better insight on who's really contributing in a meaningful way to help businesses with their API security. That's the research, Cuppinger Cole API Security and Management, written by Alexi. He did a great job. Definitely recommend checking that out. And if you want to spend a little bit more time with us, come by our booth at number 3, Data Theorem's booth. Would love to talk to you guys, and thank you so much.